It's now my pleasure to introduce our next guest, Mark Harvey-Sutton, who, like he mentioned, has known him for quite a while. They work together in agriculture at a federal level. So Mark has worked for the Australian government, several other national organisations in the ag sector. He's been the CEO of ALEC since 2019, and he's done an outstanding job for the industry, worked tirelessly for it. He's got great knowledge, great capacity, and great strengths in lots of ways. So he's been pivotal in everything that ALEC's done for this industry over the last 5 or 6 years. So it'd be really interesting to have Mark address the conference. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Terry, and thank you to all of you for coming to this conference. ALEC is a co-host of this conference, and welcome, and thanks very much. It's one of the great pleasures of doing this job is I'm actually very proud to do it, and one of the reasons I am very proud is because of the people that are involved in this industry. The people that are in this industry provide food security to people all around the world. They also make great strides in improving animal welfare in our markets, and it's notable that we are the only country that does that. And that's why I'm proud, and at the end of the day, it's events like this where we really get the opportunity to celebrate that. So let's make the most of it. I certainly have, which is why I'm very glad I'm speaking in the afternoon and not this morning, so that's good. But I'd also like to recognise Lockie. We don't have a greater friend than Lockie of our industry. As Lockie alluded to, we do go way back. We used to conspire on how to get things done when Lockie was a staffer and when I've been worked in my various roles in ag advocacy. But I just want to make a very pertinent point. We all know how busy politicians are. Lockie's blocked out his whole diary for these 2 days so he can attend this conference. I think that is a tremendous effort, Lockie, and it shows how significant you believe this trade is, and as we all know. And I'll just quickly, I also have to acknowledge the outgoing chair, David Galvin. He's been a tremendous asset to the industry. It's not just his time at ALEC, he was chair of LiveCorp for 9 years. So collectively he's devoted 16 years of his life to this industry and has done a tremendous job. And I'll be forever grateful for David's influence on the industry. And of course, the incoming chair, Chris Back, I'm very much looking forward to working with Chris. He will bring a new perspective to the industry, but also someone that does understand the industry and has been a great supporter over the years. So I also welcome Chris. Now, ALEC is the peak body for the Australian livestock exporters. And I know I'm stating the obvious there, but it's our job to represent the exporters themselves and more recently the broader supply chain as well. We are part of the broader red meat industry structure. We're part of the Red Meat Advisory Council alongside groups like Cattle Australia, Sheep Producers, Lot Feeders Association, and it is very valuable that we are considered very much part of that broader red meat industry, because at the end of the day we are, and we're a very crucial part of it. My task today is to talk about the past 2 years and what a challenging 2 years they have been. The title of my presentation in the program is What the Flock, and I think that's very appropriate because there's not too many peak industry councils that are faced with the scenario where you have a government that's looking to shut down part of your industry. That's an extremely challenging scenario. And I'm going to reference a couple of earlier things that were said today. We heard Andrew Robb this morning say get angry. We need to stand up for rural Australia. And if anything, where we are now with live sheep is a cautionary tale. But thankfully, we did stand up, and I'm going to go through a bit of that today. So where did this policy come from? So Labor adopted this policy back in 2018 when they were in opposition. They did not take government at the federal election in 2019. We engaged with Labor in that intervening period. The general view that we received during that time was it will be fine, it's okay. And at the same time, industry was doing an incredible job of reforming. What the sheep industry, the live sheep exporters have done in terms of reforming animal welfare in the voyages, what in market is nothing short of extraordinary. And when you come to an election in 2022 and the industry is the best in the world, it's understood its mistakes and addressed them, and to still have a policy that it gets shut down just speaks to the fact that this was nothing more than politics. It was purely political, and it was a purely political decision against a marginalised part of the country, which is the rural and regional populations of Australia. And I think we have to think more and more about what we did with Keep the Sheep and what we might be able to do in the future, because I think we do have to confront that reality. In the end, we were shut down for political reasons. Let that sink in. So, although much of the publicised fight, I suppose, against the banning of live sheep has been through the Keep the Sheep campaign, the fight actually started much earlier. When we, after the 2022 election, ALEC coalesced 25 national organisations to sign a letter to the Prime Minister saying that this will be a red line. This is a red line for Australian agriculture, that you can have a policy to shut down an industry for political reasons. That was ignored. We presented to the federal government the evidence of the reform, the high standards of animal welfare that were in place, the things that had happened, how important the industry is to rural Australia, in particular rural WA. That was ignored. So, normally, when you're a peak body, you do policy, you do evidence, you do facts and figures. Unfortunately, that was not going to work in this situation. And evidence didn't matter. It was politics. It was politics. It was politics. And that placed us in an extraordinary situation, because we knew that the trade was worth fighting for. We knew it deserved to be stood up for. We knew it deserved to stay because it's a legitimate industry. So how were we going to do that? And so we took the step of going, well, if this is a political decision, our response has to be political. Now, that had never been really undertaken by agricultural representative organisations in Australia before. Sure, some people think they might have gone political, but really, no one had ever done it. It was new ground. And I remember a very important meeting here in WA. We're in the WA Farmers Office. No one really knew how to run a campaign, but we just knew this is what we had to do. And it was not a decision taken lightly, but we knew we had to go political to give the industry a chance. And I guess one of the great things about agriculture is, after we had debated all that, I think the simple thing that we came up with was, well, let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. And what happened was something extraordinary. Is this the clicker? There we go. Now just have a look at that photo. That is part of a convoy of over 3,000 vehicles in the first rally that was organised for Keep the Sheep. Now, in Keep the Sheep coming together, it really was a bit of a shoulder to the wheel type scenario, because I can't justifiably stand up here and say it was all ALEC. There were other people that were looking to do something. There were people that were wanting to fight. And I just want to mention some of the organisations that really got the ball rolling to get the campaign going. And that is WA Farmers, WA Livestock Transporters Association, the WA Shearing Industry Association, the Stub Merino Breeders of Western Australia, the Livestock Collective and Whalia. If those organisations hadn't coalesced, the campaign would have gone nowhere. And then we also had a bloke called Paul Brown that decided, I'm going to do a truck rally. And so we thought, well, we better tack on to that. And it just grew. It was one of the most extraordinary things I have ever seen. Initially, when it was all getting going, do we go to the truck rally? Do we not? It was that sort of, it was just moving at that sort of pace. And when I got there, I had a privilege of riding along. I wasn't driving, I can't drive a truck. I was riding along in one of the front trucks. And I don't know, sometimes if you have the privilege at work to actually be a little bit emotional about what you're doing, it was just one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And what's more, people were coming out of their shops, their cafes as the convoy went past, the number of people that were tooting their horns, you know, and I think that was really important for people because I think a lot of people thought, oh, we might be a bit unpopular doing this. We only got one flip the bird that I counted and everyone else was very happy about it. And I think that's really, really important because when you've got a government that's bearing down on you, that's not listening, that's ignoring you, sometimes you're not sure how to fight. But what Keep the Sheep did, and I think this was the most really important thing, is it gave people something to do. It gave them an avenue to fight this stupid decision. And, you know, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. There were 2 truck rallies in the end. This was the rally at Mouchet. This was at the end of the first truck rally. Look at that. How often do you see people coming together like that in agriculture? The government knew they had something on their hands. This was one of my favourite pictures from the campaign. This is the big ram, the giant ram in Goulburn in New South Wales. And the Goulburn City Council actually gave approval for the Keep the Sheep sign to be put out the front there. And that was a real indication of solidarity of the national sheep industry with the producers in WA and understanding the importance of maintaining that market. We had a rally in Canberra. It was the first national rally for agriculture in 40 years. It was backed by national organisations. The National Farmers Federation backed it as well. Now, you might look at that and go, that's just a picture. But that was the entire opposition coming down and standing in support of the industry. And I'll get to the outcome of the election in a minute, but for those that understand how the politics of Canberra work, that doesn't happen. You don't get every single MP from one party coming out to back a single cause. And I think that was actually really incredible, and it showed the impact that the campaign was seeking. And this was a message that came from the National Farmers Federation. So it really was quite amazing. We kept fighting, we kept fighting. The campaign narrowed. The campaign raised $1.5 million. It got over 120,000 signatures of people in support of the trade. Now, just to put that in context, when Murray Watt introduced the phase-out bill into Parliament, he used a petition from the RSPCA of 40,000 signatures. We tripled that. We tripled that. So if you ever doubt whether people support you, just remember that. And the strategy that we deployed was to target marginal electorates in WA, because Western Australia was actually crucial to the success of the federal government. And so this is a picture of us on election day. I'd never done anything like that before, but we had over 300 volunteers, people driving in from all over country WA, giving up their time to hand out information about the impact that the ban will have on them. And I think the other thing just to remember with the campaign, I think some people, when they sort of thought about the campaign, they thought, oh, it's just a bit ad hoc, it's a few hicks getting together, whatever. We were a registered third party for the federal election, which means we abided by all electoral laws. We had a lot of governance to go through. We set up a separate board to actually run the campaign. And there are figures that show in last year's federal election, or this year, sorry, God, it's a long year, what the flock. But in this year's election, the largest third-party campaign of the federal election was Keep the Sheep. So that's quite an achievement. So we fought. Wouldn't that shit, yeah. So I want to talk about this because this is a very important point, because there will be a lot of Monday experts that say, you lost. You lost the campaign. But one of the things we were doing when we were running the campaign is we were getting political polling. We were actually gauging what was happening, what were people thinking. And some of the polling results we did a statewide poll of Western Australia. Awareness of the issue was at 90%. So that's quite extraordinary. The pollsters that we were talking to, and this is a very credible polling agency, they are actually used by major corporations. They're one of the best, and they said that's off the charts. So I think the campaign did an excellent job of actually bringing that awareness. But I suppose the learning that we have to take from the campaign is, at the end of the day, there were bigger issues on people's mind. And I don't think we should necessarily see that as a failure. I mean, what really was, in the context of the whole political scene in Australia, a niche issue. And we took it to the front pages of the national press. We took it to the news. It was on the radar. Every political analysis leading into the federal election raised live sheep as an issue, and then that was a concern. So we did what we could, but at the end of the day, it wasn't to be. The swing was on. People had bigger issues on their mind, and I think that's something we have to really contemplate. As people that devote their time to rural and regional Australia, they had other things on their mind. So going back to what Andrew Robb said this morning, we can't look at it as a failure. We have to look at it as the beginning, and we have to get angry because we have to be heard. We actually have to make people change their votes because of issues that are impacting rural Australia. Now, I want to make another point here, because one of the things about the campaign as well, you know, it was the most united the ag sector had ever been. But I think the ag sector more broadly has a long way to go to get the courage and bravery to back these things wholeheartedly, because there were still parts of the sector that were happy to let live sheep go. They didn't want to stand in solidarity because they were worried about ruining their relationship with the federal government. They were worried about, you know, will we burn bridges? And my response to that was always, well, if you can't stand up for a decision, if you can't stand up for a part of the sector that you are part of, what are you in the game for? Why wouldn't you stand? You know, and one of the frustrating things is some sectors of the ag sector saw fit to coalesce with the federal government on this because they saw advantage for their own organisations. And a lot of that was because they wanted to maintain a relationship with the federal government. But I want to make a very important point here. That is us, 6 weeks after the federal election, this is ALEC, 6 weeks after the federal election, standing with the Federal Agriculture Minister, the Agriculture Minister for the very government that we just had a huge fight against, and we were very welcome. And you know why? Because we did it well. Labor knew that we were doing what we had to do for our industry. A senior elder statesman of the Labor Party got asked by a member of our industry, should we have gone as hard as we did? And his response was, bloody oath you should have, because if you didn't, they would have thought you were weak as piss. We gained respect out of this. They knew they will think twice about ever banning an industry for political reasons because of what we did. And if you are good at your job, and if you know what you're doing, and you know how to engage with governments, and you can find the areas that you still have to work together on, you can be standing there 6 weeks after the federal election after having a massive blue, but coming together on things that you have to work on. Now, I know a lot of what I've talked about is sheep, but ALEC has a very important job to do because the biggest part of our industry is cattle. And we are working towards making sure the cattle industry does not find itself in the same situation that live sheep exports did. Some of the things we are doing is we are coming up with the plan as industry. We are working with LiveCorp in partnership to come up with the cattle growth plan so we can actually grow the industry. And that's a really important thing to be doing. Here's a reason why I think cattle industry will continue to grow. This is President Prabowo. He's the President of Indonesia. Indonesia is our biggest market for live cattle, and he has a mandate to provide 80 million lunches per day to school children, pregnant mothers, because he wants to build the nutritional base for his population, for his people. He wants them to be healthy, he wants them to be stronger. And the relationship between Australia and Indonesia as a geopolitical relationship is critically important. There is no relationship that is more important. And I'm going to go back to the very beginning of my speech where I said why I'm proud to represent the industry, why I think it's a good industry, it's an industry for good. There's no better reason than that. That's why we do it. Yeah, you probably make a bit of money on the side, exporters, but that is a very bloody good reason to do it. The markets that we send our livestock to help children like that. It gives them food security. It lets those countries grow stronger, and that is a very big responsibility that our industry has, and I know everyone in this room is very proud of that. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and let's enjoy the rest of the conference and celebrate what we have achieved. Thank you very much.